Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back. So, if I were to disclose to you certain aspects of my sexuality, my diet, my opinions, closeted opinions on certain religious distinctions, I fully appreciate that that might strike us quite personally to some of you. You didn't give a damn, right? Until I made them your business, until I decided to speak on the internet about these subjects, until I decided to ask for your interrogative insights. The algorithm makes things that need not be your business your business. And you are only controlled by the interest that you are indebted to as a result of your offense, your dissatisfaction, and your desire. That is politics. And that is the system that I, in this video and in this entire series, endeavor to punish. That is the tone we are setting, and that is the tone that that we are maintaining from the last video. I talk on this channel incessantly about cultural imports, about artificially engineered subcultures, and yet I don't eat meat. And I will make no secret of the fact that I believe that the corporate arm of veganism, green ethics, the progressive politics of the sustainability gospel, the green gospel, these are precisely my contempt. I am drawing a critical distinction here between a personally determined lifestyle, informed by whatever miscellaneous convictions that might be motivating your decisions, and an artificially engineered subculture designed to ingratiate a network of malevolent interests and oligarchy far beyond the faux benevolent ethos of green capitalism. Really, though, it is communism and you just don't know it. I will not be softening my frustration and my intolerance for the system here. And you don't have to share my frustration. You don't have to share, quite frankly, my irritation. But once you understand how complexly insidious this system is, I think you will be just as annoyed. See, the thing is, we are programmed on the internet especially to outsource our outrage, to absorb the unidirectional emotionality of a comment section. The algorithm draws most people into systems and into spaces online where they don't want, quite frankly, to think for themselves. Not my subscribers, not you guys. You guys are perfect. Truly, you guys don't let me get away with anything, and I appreciate that. Anyway, the pretext that we currently operate in is, quite frankly, overwhelmed by faux benevolent ideologies. I love politics. You guys know I do. You guys know that I adore talking about politics, but politics, even on the front that concerns diet, is a distraction. These faux benevolent ideologies are smokescreens. What I'm saying is they are engineered through emotionality, through social justice, and through debt, which you contractually consent to, because how else will you survive if not in the system that feeds you? And they act like they hate each other. They engineer you and me to believe that we hate the person with, different politics next door, without really understanding why, or believing that we need to understand why. In programming, that is how abstraction and encapsulation works, by the way. And so at the end of the day, I personally care more about why you interpret the things that I say when I say them than I do the emotional issue of that of that issue. Why you interpret the things I say when I say them, then I do the emotional issue of that interpretation. And if you've been on my channel for any extended period of time, you'll know that my subscribers operate exactly the same way. Like I stole that from them. I learned that from them. Veganism is an emotional sore point. So is climate change and affirmative action. Like these things, they hit deep. And to a conspiracy theorist like me, that suggests that the emotional sore point is simply not the full story. It shouldn't be so destabilizing. Like, it is concerning. But that is because there is programming running underneath that. That is abstraction. Affirmative action, land policy, abortion showdowns on YouTube. These are all artificial fault lines made sore and charged by our emotional concern for them. And so I guess what I'm saying is that what it communicates to me is that there belies a more consequential architecture of control. I'm not actually a conspiracy theorist, by the way, but yeah, if you've watched my previous video, you will know that there is a financial cartel, the outgrowth of an ideological cartel specialized in doing business with your feelings, transacting your emotionality and your politics whilst funding both sides of the war. This is my hypothesis. I fundamentally believe that veganism is a Trojan horse engineered to sexually placate the culture and harden the sentimentality of the dollar. So, without further ado, let's begin. So if you've watched my previous video, I really do encourage you to check that out before, delving into this. But in summary, the interruptive grafting of a foreign system of exchange into a deeply advanced, embedded, and functional cultural context is more than just awkward and a little annoying. It's more than just, an invasion of your personal space. It is catastrophically destabilizing. And so you very reasonably ask me why? Well, because you literally undercut cultural foundations with foreign economic paradigms that had no business being there. See, when you forcibly impose an alien framework onto a long-standing economic reality, like for example, dismantling cattle-based systems in Tibet, Mongolia, those cowrie shell economies in Malayan empires, the grain-based taxation system in China, all in favor of fiat currency, you do more than just introduce inefficiency. What I'm saying is you undercut the very foundation of cultural legitimacy. Listen to me, it is catastrophic, because what you're doing here, what we're talking about here, isn't just our progressivism gently adapting old traditions into modernity. We are talking about a complete superposition of new meaning, new context, and new definition onto what once was. You guys, it is so, I don't even know how to describe it. It is so impressively severe that it's like going into somebody's house, right? Noticing that they use broomsticks and then deciding, no, these are our javelins, and we will use them in war against you. And if we leave a mess in the wake of that war, you will have to clean it up with those very same broomsticks. Imagine this. This is, I don't know. This is like this is more than just gaslighting, you guys. This is absolutely diabolical. Anyway, animals, at the end of the day, we know they cannot be taxed, they cannot be inflated, and they cannot be manipulated into inflation cycles. But the dollar can be, and so the agenda is to essentially make sure that everybody is forced to use it. Capitalism makes traditions a trade in virginity, land, and power, where those within the system enslave themselves to capitalist-based workforces to essentially afford basic human experiences. I mean, I remember we discussed lobola, right? Now it quite literally costs you, like it is an expense to have a wife, to be able to invest in a family, because that tradition fundamentally has been perverted, specifically under the imposed paradigm of capitalism. It's changed the definitions of everything within that tradition. And so, as you can see, the dollar becomes more an effective weapon of control. But I think the second tier of geopolitical narcissism in this entire exchange is how we see green ethical exhibitionism play itself out. Because see, by curing within all of us the idea that third world economies, third world countries are solely responsible for subjecting the rest of the world to the consequences of greenhouse gas emitting pollutants, climate change, right? By reinforcing this narrative over and over again, these interests position themselves in the perfect, in the perfect pretext to offer themselves once again as the solution, to enslave us to their solution, to their green solution. And it's like Jekyll Island in 1913 all over again. Watch, guys, just catch up on the previous video if you're confused. But that is essentially what it is. They have proposed themselves, these oligarchs have proposed themselves as the solution. Truly, the World Bank and the IMF are simply not very creative. They use the same mechanism of debt-based enslavement. The World Bank and the IMF offer economic incentives to other nations to phase out cattle, claiming that it reduces emissions. And yet, the entire objective is essentially just to cure the sentimentality of the dollar on the agricultural front. The green gospel, right? Sustainability politics and veganism, usually as an outgrowth, is so clearly the solution. But in the same way that only they control access to the dollar, only their corporate interests have the right patented GMO seeds and synthetic fertilizers to create a nutritionally and seasonally, what am I even saying? Yeah, only they have the right patented GMO seeds and synthetic fertilizers to create and be able to produce nutritionally and seasonally robust enough vegan crop to feed everybody. See what I'm saying? This is green ethical exhibitionism. It is an ecological excuse for enslavement. They are effectively creating a new form of communism under the lie of capitalism. Without them, without their seeds, without their special synthetic fertilizers, everybody starves. They are the global state, and if you've watched my previous video, you know exactly who they are. Not only that, but they also outsource most of the environmental damage. These nations shift CO2 heavy vegan production to Africa, Asia, Latin America, punishing other nations as we've seen before through geopolitical whiplash and sabotage. Sorry, I guess I should call them those ever so helpful structural adjustment programs to make sure that indigenous seed production is essentially criminalized. The United States and the EU do, as a fact, impose higher tariffs on meat exports from the global south while subsidizing vegan alternatives. When we look at Russia and India, we saw that both have resisted Western GMO policies and they have faced economic retaliation. Look at Mexico. The US did threaten trade sanctions in 2013 if Mexico refused GMO corn exports. South Africa, as we speak, or as I speak, and where I am obviously from, is currently under pressure by the IMF to replace cattle-based farming with lab-grown meat alternatives, obviously tied to World Bank funding, which South Africa must pay back, crippling the nation into further debt because the IMF, the World Bank, and the Federal Reserve Bank are owned by the same financial cartel interests that I spoke about in the previous video. Like it's all tied to the same network of people. Monsanto, Bayer, Syngenta, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, etc. All Vanguard or BlackRock owned interests. Green finance weaponization is not a conspiracy. I mean, it is obviously it is common knowledge that ESG scores penalize nations that continue livestock farming. Suggestions to adopt lab-grown meat, soy protein, and patented plant-based foods under the guise of sustainability are not suggestions at all. In my opinion, they cannot be suggestions. They are rules because WEF partners make sure that those who resist pay dearly for it. Export bans, tariffs, cultural demonization. You guys, one can engineer a placid culture in more ways than one, and I'm going to prove it to you. There are biological, economic, and genetic consequences to consuming GMOs. They impact fertility, temperament, hormone balance, disease risk, and long-term genetic integrity. And we all know that lab-grown meat is developed using growth factors. These are hormones. They use what is called fetal bovine serum. I think that's what it's called. I've got my notes linked down below, but yeah, I think it is called fetal bovine syndrome in order to stimulate cell growth. These are growth hormones, guys, and they are not harmless. The process of artificially stimulating cell division in lab-grown meat involves using immortalized cell. Involves using immortalized cell lines, which are by definition cancerous in nature. We have always known that consuming artificially proliferated cells could introduce carcinogenic risks, right? That is, again, that is a fact. And the rise in cancer in the most developed of nations is, in my opinion, not at all a narrative of coincidence. It's not just about Africans. It's not just about the global north. It's not about race. It's not about it's not about your ethnicity. This affects all of us. But my personal conviction is, especially in doing research for my next series, is that Africans, for whatever reason, tend to be experimented on first. And that has consistently been the case in eugenics, in genetic conspiracies, Project Coast here in South Africa. For whatever reason, they decided to just erase that from cultural memory. Like, this was this. I'm gonna lose it. Um, this was a biological weapons program adjacent to MK Ultra running. It ran during apartheid. Anyway, that is a deep dive for another day. On the second front is how this affects our endocrine system, especially as women. Because women, this is this is personal. Like this is a they are literally playing with our sanity, guys. The growth hormones used in cultured meat, such as IGF-1 and recombinant bovine growth hormone, are definitively associated with increased estrogenetic activity, which I believe, by the way, for men, by lowering testosterone levels, actually does feminize the male physiology. This foreign hormonal interruption is a reasonable explication, in my opinion, as to why our menstrual cycles for so many women never regularize from puberty. We have so much compromised fertility in young women. Like, why? Like, I don't know. Like, it makes no sense. IGF-1 is associated. Like, read the scientific studies. IGF-1 is associated with the development of endometriosis, with several other endocrine metabolic disorders like polycystic ovary syndrome, otherwise known as PCOS. I'm sorry, but it just was not always this hard. It wasn't always this complicated. And when I look at what causes accelerated fertility in certain populaces of Black females, I cannot ignore the fact that there are abnormal steroid hormones in our food. Now, we also need to understand that lab-grown meat lacks the natural structure of real meat, and its cellular matrix is artificial, meaning that it may very well fail to nourish gut microbacteria in the same way as natural protein, as real protein. Girls, whose stomach always hurts? like guys, it's not a good time. The lack of natural collagen, creatine, and natural micronutrients in, like I said, their natural form has, I think, reasonably been conjectured to result in weakened immunity and cognitive function over generations. Again, I will link the studies down below. Studies do show that GMOs do contribute to higher risks of autism, of ADHD, and cognitive decline due to gut-brain axis disruptions. Like, I'm gonna say something. It might hit as offensive, but honestly, are we all just magically neurodivergent, or are we actually being engineered to submit to certain psychological distinctions? Like, I don't I don't know. Like, woman, how severe are your mood swings? How often does your stomach hurt? I may not have PCOS, but I do know full well that it is awful. What I'm saying is that when we are talking about foreign growth mediums used in artificial meat production, we're not talking about harmless, magical fairy soil. Guys, listen to me. We are talking about powerful proteins that alter the expression of genetic code and cause meat to grow on plastic dishes. Guys, like, imagine what your immune system is having to put up with if you're consuming this stuff on the daily. Of course, foreign proteins introduced to a completely functional system would trigger autoimmune reactions. Of course, you'd be hypersensitive, which honestly does explain the increased allergies and inflammatory disorders. You can be programmed through your diet. You can be placated behaviorally, temperamentally, and generationally because you can expose your genes to manipulating biological agents. And that 100% includes men. If as a man you have natural aggression, it is my personal belief, as supported by studies, that it can most definitely be smothered. And sometimes we don't even have to feed you this GMO crap. We just have to shame you into thinking that you as the male species are the poison of the world and you will do it yourself. Equally, I think with all of this hormone disruption, we can gaslight women into these like insane emotional states. This whole thing, Are you guys seeing this? Please check out that study. I linked it. I'm sure I linked it down below. So basically, it talks about glyphosate, so Roundup. This is found in GMO crops. It has been definitively linked to sperm damage and to testosterone testosterone reduction. When we look at that study also analyzed, okay, I'm not sure if it was that study, I'll have to double check, but there are also higher miscarriage rates in exposed populations. On top of that, they did also find birth defects and reproductive organ malformations in animal populations. Some studies even suggest that GMO crops sent to African nations have different genetic modifications than those sold in the West, with higher pesticide retention and epigenetic effects. Certain GMOs do increase the risk of high blood pressure, prostate cancer, and diabetes in African populations, suggesting that specific genetic vulnerabilities are indeed being exploited. I have personal experience with this in my own family. GMO foods also contain higher levels of phytoestrogens, which can alter neurotransmitter balance and, as a result, reduce aggression, ambition, and assertiveness in men. Look at how this affects our dopamine receptors. We have what is called dopamine receptor downregulation as a result of this exposure. And GMO foods, or at the very least, excessive consumption of GMO-based diets, i.e. heavy in soy and processed ingredients, has been linked to reduced motivation and increased passivity. And then on top of that, because I am absolutely not done. Lab-grown meat production, despite being marketed as eco-friendly, requires massive amounts of energy, growth medium, and bioreactors that consume more water and electricity than traditional animal farming, and more chemical inputs to sustain unnatural cell growth. This obviously makes lab-grown meat much more expensive and resource-intensive than natural meat, essentially like completely contradicting its supposed sustainability benefits. So yeah, I think let's wrap this up. I think I've been talking for a while. So if I've learned anything from this series, from doing research, and from you guys, it's that truly one need not impose direct physical control over a population to engineer passivity. The chemical composition of food, the architecture of economic dependency, as we discussed in my last video, the whole debt-based system, and the weaponization of ecological morality are more than sufficient. Veganism in its corporate incarnation, not as a lifestyle choice, not as something that you out of your own volition just decide to do. I'm talking about the corporate arm of veganism, right? This in all its gaslighting glory is not about ethical consumption. It is a Trojan horse, a geopolitical mechanism engineered to soften the psychological resistance of a population whilst fortifying the economic dominion of financial elites. In summary, because I've been talking for a long time, and I know I've said a lot of things, and sometimes it just helps to wrap things up in bullet points. So firstly, number one, okay, lab-grown meat and GMOs, in my opinion, my opinion, this is just what I think. Lab-grown meat and GMOs are not about sustainability, but they are about economic and biological control. Why? Because they are engineering a communist monopoly, not a free market. I don't have a problem with vegans or veganism. I have a problem with the corporate architecture that supports it. Second point, the push for look, you know what? If I have to remember all this, you do too. There we go. The push for artificial food centralizes food supply chains, essentially creating this communist situation, and it weakens natural immunity, it reduces fertility, and it enforces corporate food dependency. Third, traditional agricultural economies are being actively dismantled in order to enforce reliance on Western food monopolies. Look, I keep saying, I don't have a problem with veganism, but my issue is that in a free market, individuals could adopt veganism, could even adopt the green gospel without any financial entrapment. Yet every economic model promoting veganism, the green gospel agenda, sustainability politics, surfaces the same surfaces the same financial overlords, the same global cartel of vampiric interests, and that is my issue. Look, as you can tell, the words are disappearing now, and that tells me that I've been talking for way too long. But thank you for listening to me. Thank you for joining me today. I'm done. I just want to read the comments now. I'm done. We're done for today. I hope to see you very, very soon. I don't know how soon that will be because I'm getting quite busy. Otherwise, I never actually disappear. My inboxes are always open. I respond to everyone. I may not get to you like immediately because I'm busy, but I always make sure to get back to you. That is my dedication. Like I love talking to you guys, and especially because most of you are smarter than me. So, yeah, learning from you has been really, really a joy, really an honor, really a pleasure. If I'm gonna share anything, I feel like sharing something. So if I'm gonna share anything that I've learned this week in my personal life, it's that you need to charge for your worth. Okay, and that could be your emotional investment, the effort of your skills, your aptitudes. Don't let that be exploited. Don't let your intelligence be exploited. Like you were not brought here onto this earth for free, especially when you are spending so much time, energy, effort, like emotional resources on a job, like whatever it may be, especially if it's in the corporate capacity. Guys, you need to charge for your worth. Okay, don't be stepped on, don't be trampled over. You're worth more than that. Okay, I'm telling you. If no one else told you, I'm telling you, and you better not forget it. So I'll hopefully see you very, very soon. You take care, and goodbye.